Man, I was gonna sit down, start talking about Marc Bergevin and whether or not he would come back to the Canadiens, talk about the pros, talk about the cons, and get into that entire discussion. But we're moving that to tomorrow because we had ourselves what was a post made by the Daily Face-Off podcast crew with Frank Saravalli that goes over something that is just so weird that I had to make a video about it. Whenever we have these super weird topics, it's always some really interesting discussion fodder, and it brings for some entertaining laughs, I guess. So, without further ado, let's go over onto the Daily Face-Off podcast quote that was on here on Twitter. It's about a minute-long video, and Frank Saravalli goes over the entire detail over here. Let's read the tweet together. The NHL CBA requires teams to play 6 preseason games. The Carolina Hurricanes have only played 4. According to Frank Saravalli, there's thought that the only reason the NHL even noticed was because they were told by the Montreal Canadiens. And in the clip, you can see Frank Saravalli discussing the entire thing. There are a whole bunch of questions. I read the tweet initially and I was like, wait, what? And my mind started racing with a whole bunch of hypotheticals. Okay, firstly, how is it even possible that an NHL team does not play the required amount of preseason games? Secondly, how the heck does Montreal get involved in this? And thirdly, what does this mean? What are the repercussions? What's going to happen? Is this a bad thing? Are they going to get fined or whatever? Frank Saravalli kind of goes over it in the clip, and he says that NHL teams go out there and they schedule their own preseason games. That's something I personally didn't know, that teams go out there, they communicate with each other, okay, we're going to be here on this date and another city the next day, so 2 days after that, we'll schedule our game then, and then we'll play, and then we'll schedule another game with another team. That makes a lot of sense. Firstly, if NHL teams schedule their own preseason games, Saravalli said that maybe the Carolina Hurricanes thought that because it's not the same kind of year, because it's a pandemic year, things are a little bit different, maybe that was the thought process in their minds when they were making their own schedule, because, I mean, the Carolina Hurricanes, take a look at their preseason right here, 2 games against the Lightning and 1 against the Predators, 1 more tomorrow against the Predators again. They only scheduled 4 games, and they were only against 2 teams. And so, since the NHL CBA requires teams to play 6 preseason games and the Hurricanes have only scheduled 4, they are kind of in direct violation. However, it is kind of odd that there is a rule like this in the first place. Oh, you're required to do this. And if you don't do this, well, what are the repercussions? According to Frank Saravalli, doesn't really think there's going to be any. What even is the point of making the rule there if you're just going to allow teams to not follow it? You know, I get that preseason games are only really there for the team's sake and for the teams to be able to adjust their own rosters and see who's good, who's not, who's capable of playing in the NHL, but it would be kind of odd to me for there to not be any repercussions because you're directly not following the rules. Either way, though, Frank Saravalli says that even though there's no confirmation, there is thought going around that the Montreal Canadiens were the team that alerted the league about this. Now, another thing, how in the heck does the NHL not, notice that? Why do you have to have other teams doing your policing for you? You're the big dog in this situation. You're at the top of the food chain. You are the league. How do you not, look at all the schedules going on and say, okay, yeah, they're following the rules that we put into place, 6 games played right here. Why does it have to be Montreal's job to go out there and tell you guys, hey, that other team over there, yeah, we kind of have beef with them, but look at this. They're only playing 4 games. It's not allowed, right? And honestly, coming from Saravalli, I think there's a part of me that does want to believe that. You know, okay, I want to believe it because that's just funny. But do I believe it? That's kind of a different thing right there. It is so ridiculous to the point that it's kind of tough to even comprehend somebody making that up, you know? Like, oh, this rivalry between the Canadiens and the Hurricanes with the Aho offer sheet and now the Kotkaniemi offer sheet, and now it's gotten to a point where Montreal is snitching on the Hurricanes for not having enough preseason games. That's so ridiculous that if you write that in a movie, it would be critiqued for being unrealistic. So I think it's one of those situations where it's like, yeah, it's so wrong, it's kind of right. And now it kind of becomes a little bit more of a cycle of who's gonna get the next jab in there, you know? Are we gonna have ourselves Carolina snooping around the Canadiens organization now, trying to find holes in their procedure and report those to the league? Furthermore, was this just coincidence, or was it an isolated incident? Were the Canadiens looking at every NHL team trying to find faults in their preseason schedule, or were they only paying attention to Carolina because Carolina is Carolina? Here's an interesting tidbit for you. If you want to take a look at other teams who are going out there and potentially violating this 6 preseason game rule, look no further than the New Jersey Devils. Now, the Devils have completed their preseason. They played 5 games against Washington, against the Rangers, against the Islanders, against the Caps again, and then against the Rangers once more on October 6th. But that's it. Their next game is October 15th against the Chicago Blackhawks. However, there is a little bit of a caveat to the Devils because they actually had their final preseason game yesterday against the New York Islanders, but that game was canceled because there was a power outage at the Prudential Center. So, technically, Carolina isn't the only team that's going out there with less than 6 preseason games played. New Jersey intended to have the full 6, but they got the last one shut down yesterday, so, I think it's a little bit too late, right, to go out there and try to schedule another hockey game between now and next week. Wednesday, I believe, is when the NHL season begins. Some of these teams don't begin till Friday, so I would think you're still kind of cutting it close if you're trying to schedule an extra game, or maybe even 2 games for Carolina's sake, between now and the start of the season come next week. You know, I do think there's some mathematics that could go behind this as well, right? Because if every NHL team plays 6 preseason games, okay, 6 times 32, that's 32, 64, 128, plus 64 once more, that is 192. Okay, so that would be a total of 192 preseason games shared between the 32 teams, and there are 2 teams per game, so 192 divided by 2, that is, what is that, 96? I'm sure you could go onto the NHL schedule and try to look up if there are 96 games that have been pre-made. Actually, I'm going to do that right now. Let's go over on NHL.com, go to the schedule, and try to count it up by hand, actually. So, the NHL preseason started Saturday, September 25th, and if we try to count the total amount of games over here until the start of the regular season, which would be October 12th, oh my goodness, I actually counted it up. It's 103. There were 103 preseason games, so there were actually several teams out there that did more than the minimum 6 games required in the preseason. So maybe that's kind of why. Maybe if the NHL was just looking at their preseason schedule and saying, okay, we have 103 games, we have a minimum of 96 that we need in order to get a full 32-team league playing 6 games apiece to mathematically work out, it would make a lot more sense then, actually, when I think about it like that. See, this is why I like these videos. They're so weird, they're so dumb, and it gets us thinking about things we normally would not be thinking about. But either way, talk to me in the comments, what do you think about the Montreal Canadiens reportedly being the team that snitches on the Carolina Hurricanes for not having the appropriate amount of preseason games played. They've only had 4. Well, they've only played 3, actually. They've got 1 more tomorrow, and that's going to be it, which, according to the NHL CBA, is not enough. Either way, though, let me know in the comments what are your thoughts about this situation. I hope you enjoyed this Vrasraj Rolls 99. Sorry about that, though, Habs fans. The Bergevin video is probably going to come out tomorrow because I was supposed to do it now, but this popped up and I was like, yeah, I want to talk about that instead. And bye.